Hello, y'all. This is Coach Lindsay from the Jackass Podcast. This is the Jackass Podcast. This will be episode number 17. And today I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff that I don't get and that I kind of find annoying. And that this is one of those areas where change has not been the greatest. Or maybe it's not just change. No, there's some change to it. We are going to talk about the ridiculousness of the government shutdown still. And some of my thoughts on that. The difference between students now versus when I was in school like 25 years ago. My thoughts on WWE right now. I'll be honest, this is a couple days late because I've been congested like a motherfucker. And the internet in my house has been funky at certain times of night. And the last time I tried to do this, it was funky again. So I'm trying this right now before I gotta go pick my wife up for work. So when I get back, I can do the editing and stuff. So I'm just being honest with you. Football thoughts I'll include. This is Saturday, so I'll include what I saw in college football today and stuff that I like. My thoughts on like difference in something that I love to do as a kid, and I still kind of love to do as an adult, being a big kid at times. All right, so that's what we're gonna talk about. First, let's talk about that big elephant in the room, donkey in the room, however you want to say it. The government shutdown. I don't get this. And I don't get why at the federal level, our government is not doing their job. Specifically, the legislative branch and the executive branch are not doing their damn job. In such a way that people this country relies on are not going to get paid till this is done. That people who don't understand how this affects people when they're not making 400, 500, whatever the hell politicians make grand a year. Like, and you got servicemen and women who making maybe 30, 40 grand a year. Or you got even like some of the higher ups making a little over 100 grand a year. They're not making congressmen and senators money. And they're not making presidential money. But all these people make that money who, because their feelings are hurt and they don't know how to fucking compromise. They don't know how to do what they're supposed to do anymore. And almost to me, this comes out, and it's going to be a common theme today because I'm in a mood about people not doing the jobs they're supposed to do. And we'll get in that in education and stuff like that. But as far as like our government, our congressmen and our president, as far as it goes for making sure the federal government is running like it should be, aren't doing their job. Or, you know what, they're doing their job, but they're doing a horrible effort of it. I have come to think that there needs to be a penalty or a punishment if congressmen and senators and the president don't do this simple part of their job. There has to be something. Not just elections, no, there has to be an actual penalty. Maybe they get charged whatever their day rate is. Because I have a feeling that as a teacher, if, say, in Texas, we don't normally go on strike, but if, like, the teachers union goes on strike, they probably don't get paid while they're on strike not working, unless they come up with some compromise. Like, when people don't do their job, they shouldn't get paid for not doing their job. You know what? It's just dawned on me. I wonder how much politicians would do, how much more work they would get done if they got paid on a commission rate. Like, you have to introduce this many bills, you have to help get this many bills done. And they were paid like a commission rate for getting the job done that they're supposed to do. I bet you this was attached to money that went in their pockets that actually affected them this would be handled already, but it doesn't. They're acting like just because they make the laws, they're above the laws. So if you like this idea, man, comment. But there should be some sort of penalty for our people that we elect not doing the job, one of the fundamental parts of their job, and making sure that all the federal workers that work under them are paid and not having to be put on furlough or out of work because people just aren't doing their job. Because you got military folks still going in, but they're not getting a paycheck until this is done. You got whatever they call essential workers still going in, but not getting a paycheck for doing their job. That's not really how this country works. If the federal government wants to lose a lot of employees to private citizenship, there's going to be a way to do it. So I hope that by the next time I do this podcast, there's some resolution to this. I haven't heard of one. Just get the bill done and stop trying to add the pork belly and all that crap, the stuff that doesn't need to be done to it. Just get the job done. Make a bill about whatever the hell it's supposed to be about, instead of having all these earmarks and a 1,000-page bill that shouldn't be that long to explain whatever the law is, so people can get their money that they are earning defending this country and doing work for the government. That's all I really got to say about that. Like I said, hopefully one day we come up with some penalty for this, but I doubt Congress or anybody who would be affected by that would actually want to be held accountable for not doing their fucking job. So that's what it seems to come like. That's what it seems to come off as. Chuck Schumer seems to come off like that. President Trump seems to come off like that. JD Vance. Y'all aren't doing your job. And I don't know how else to put it. Hopefully, one of y'all do your job soon. Just hopefully. And this is one of those things where we've gotten away as a people in America from holding people accountable for what they do. I work in a system that has gotten away from holding kids accountable. Like when I was a kid, I was held accountable for me doing my grade, me doing my work in the class. And all my teacher had to say was I wasn't doing my work in the class. That's all they had to say. That's all they had to prove, and they could prove it with the grade book. We've regulated stuff, so teachers have to work so much harder to do what they know would be right by the kid. And if you think failure is a hard thing, no shit, Sherlock. It's not supposed to be easy. We've done a disservice to a couple generations of kids by not teaching them how to fail and problem solve. If I have a big worry coming out of my classes, out of school, at least by middle school, I don't know how well I was ready for the world. I grew up in a unique situation. So I have a different viewpoint on a lot of things. Not to say, like, I deal with middle school kids. So by the time I was in middle school, me and my brother were both in middle school. People that started holding my brother accountable for stuff he didn't know. So I'll give you a great example of that. My brother, his name is Jamie Stafford, which is a different name than mine. He was, I guess, my half brother, but he was my brother. We had different dads. And he had a rare birth defect called junctional epidermolysis bullosa Hurley subtype, also known as junctional epidermolysis bullosa fatalis. And I think there's a couple other new names that they've come up with. If you ever want to see like what this kind of looks like, Deborah.org is a great foundation. Anytime I can support them to like my United Way stuff that I do with the district, I try to. I've never got to do something with them, but I'm going to hype them up because they are a great one. American Academy of Dermatology is a great one. They used to send kids. Actually, they probably still do. They did Camp Knutson or Camp Discovery up in Minnesota for years, and they would take 50 to 100 kids a week that had some sort of skin birth defect and let them feel normal for a week. My brother got to go as a camper and as a junior counselor till he was like 21, 22. At the time, he held the record for um, fishing. So I have a different perspective. So basically, if you don't know what that disease is, I just named it off. You can go look it up. But to give you an overview, most kids with what he had don't live past the age of 2 or 3. They break out like they have second or third degree burns, and it's usually in highly pressure point areas. So feet, hands get affected, middle of the back to the butt get affected. And my brother passed away at 23 from this. So and never looked like he was a 20-year-old. Like he looked like some of my middle school students for I don't know the last decade or so of his life. Uh, but in saying that, I had to learn to do a lot of different stuff because my mom was a single mom. Like so, and I won't act like my ex stepfather Spencer, who's still in my life, who's one of my father figures, and I love him to death. Um, he was in our lives. He just wasn't. There was a section of time where he wasn't as present because he was doing work other places. He was a Army vet, 20 years in the Army, infantry, artillery, worked on howitzers and tanks and stuff like that. I know they said at one time he tried to learn to fly a helicopter and stuff like that. And then so he was, I think he was in when I was a kid, he was in Fort Hood for a while. After we moved here from Oklahoma, he was in Fort Hood. He was in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then he was also he went to the original Desert Storm and he was in Germany for a little while. So my life was a little different. Mom was a single mom. We moved down to San Antonio because our family was here. My grandfather, my grandmother, my aunt, which was her youngest sister, lived down here. So she had family support while we were down there. And we also came down here for Brooks Army Medical Center, which has like the best burn unit in the world. And because that's how they treated my brother. So I have a little different perspective on life, on how I dealt with problem solving, how I came to be like I am, and in a lot of ways, the jackass I am. Like I don't give out sympathy just because you tell me you got a cough or you tell me you're sick. It's hard for me to do that. It was hard for me for a while, even after my brother passed, to live more than like a week or so in advance. It was a disconnect between me and my wife for a little while. Now it's not so much. I still don't look too far in advance, but I do my due diligence to go as far as I can in advance. So, but with all that being said, and we'll get talking about education and how I think it's different now than it was when I was in school. One of the things that happened after I graduated, and I think it was like I graduated in 2001. So it came into effect, I want to say 2009, 2004, No Child Left Behind, which I've said before on this podcast is the dumbest piece of legislation ever. Um, and I say this because we've based a lot of it on the trauma of failing. If we don't teach kids to fail in what is a safe space in school, and for the most part, I don't want to hear about all the crap that goes on, and it's like the 1-2% crap. I'm not worried about that crap. I'm worried about how individual kids that I got to deal with learn to problem solve, learn to figure something out on their own, have all this technology in their hand, have all this technology at their fingertips, and still don't know how to use it to get the job done because it's not what they want to do. Because we've convinced a whole bunch of kids that's all about what you want to do versus what you need to do to get by in this world. The job that you're assigned, we're setting kids up for failure after they graduate high school and walk across that stage. No one's going to convince me otherwise that we are not. as like a whole unit. And I think public education takes a hit on this because it's shit that we couldn't control. It's shit that we have to follow in order to keep our jobs, in order for me to keep my certificate. Like, you want to hear the most ridiculous thing, and I have to sign an oath every year on this stating that I'm not going to really vote. In Texas, we have the STAR test, and it is one of the most ridiculous things ever. STAR testing days. There is no day of the school year I hate more than STAR testing days. Even at schools that I've liked being at, who tried to make it as painless as possible, it is still so boring for me as a teacher. Because it's a one day a year. It's like one of 4 days a year that you take teachers out of being what teachers are supposed to be, which is be helpful to their kids and make sure that their kids understand the content. I also have another problem with this in that we have changed the way testing's done, and whoever is coming up with this test doesn't think like the kids that we teach. They think like adults, so they make test questions for adults, but not for kids at different levels at where they're supposed to be. And you're not going to convince me that they do. I've looked at too many STAR questions, whereas an adult and a college educated adult, I get confused because the difference between a couple answers is so finite and it's so subjective that you have to put in your mind something that these kids don't really ever have to deal with in reality, of how someone else thinks, of how the test maker would think this question should be answered. And that's not necessarily what that kid's going to think. So it doesn't benefit the kid. And I don't even want to go with all the statistics on like the funding of schools, the way schools are funded, the way parents like treat kids, and how some parents like freak out on their kids because they don't do well on these tests. These tests aren't a full judgment of how your kid did for the school year. Yes, as a teacher, I have to go in and teach all the teachers that we can for these jobs. But that's always been the teacher's thing. Like, so if you're not a teacher, usually, and from what I've heard from stuff like Board Teachers Podcasts and other platforms that teachers talk on, everyone kind of gets the curriculum. Everyone gets the same, what we call a year at a glance. Like at the beginning of the year, I can go on our district website, which we have. So I'm in the 4th largest district in the state of Texas. I'm in the largest district in San Antonio. And we have over 100, let's see, it's like 80 elementary campuses, 21. We have like 120 schools total, all levels of high school and some specialty schools and stuff like that. And we get to go see this thing online, year at a glance. The district has made this thing based on the tests that Texas says that we have to do. And they have it for all different levels of kids. So we have the information that we know we need to teach. And they do quick check-ins and make sure that we're doing that and all of this stuff. But everything has become so much more strict since I started being around education about 13 years ago. Because I graduated college in 2012. I got my first part of education job as a substitute in the fall of 2013. And then 2014, I started being an ISSIA and stuff like that. And then 2018, 2018, I went to a charter school. And then since 2019, I've been with the district I'm currently at, and I'm on year 7, I think. So I've worked, I basically worked like the past 13 years doing some sort of educational job. And then seeing in that 13 years stuff change. Now I want you to realize from the time that I graduated in 2001 to the time I came back to college. We had 2 different tests come through, and since I've gotten into education, the state of Texas has only made the STAR test harder for kids to do than actually say what it should be doing. Because we'll be honest, we don't know what the final score is that will be a passing score until we get the results back. And I would like if I have to put in stuff manually, I have to go look it up for that particular school year to see if that was a passing or failing grade. So that's one thing that's changed a lot since I graduated high school is the way we test kids. The amount of testing these kids take, the amount of stress we put on these kids for some stupid fucking test. Because you're not going to convince me. That's not how kids learn. That's not how we learned as kids. That's not how we prove what we learned as kids. I think looking at it as a teacher and looking at it as a student, one of my fondest memories, um, for one of my funnest activities that I remember to this day, that I would love to see the video, that I have vivid memories of what we did and why we did it when we were reading Shakespeare. When I finished out 10th grade, I was done with testing. They can't even say that now. Now you don't get completely done with testing if you pass everything the first time till your junior year when it's the U.S. history test as a freshman. And English 3 was a 0-hour class. So we were there at 7:30 in the morning in class sitting down. And I just remember we got to Shakespeare, we'd read the play, and then our project was to do a puppet show based on the play. And the only thing we had to keep was the storyline. Like, we didn't even have to keep the characters. 2000, around the end of the Bill Clinton thing with Monica Lewinsky and stuff like that, still in the news. Boy bands being a big thing, Napster being a big thing, LimeWire and all that. So we, as a group, it was me and 3 of my friends, made the fight scene from Macbeth. We called it McClinton, and we killed, and it was the war scene, it was a fight scene. So we killed off a bunch of people. We had the introduction of all the women for McClinton. And there was a parody of Mambo Number 5, where someone had done a parody as Bill Clinton singing Bimbo Number 5. And I still remember all this. Like, there's not a lot of stuff I remember from high school. I remember a few moments in football. I remember a few things. I kind of remember band. I remember a few moments in band. But I remember this assignment. I remember sitting in front of the computer making this assignment where we were finding these songs, killing off the Backstreet Boys, killing off NSYNC. Like, this is what we did, and it went within the storyline. And that's one of the more memorable things I remember. This is what I remember about my last TOS test. I finished it within an hour. I put my head down and went to sleep till they released me so I could go to class. That's literally all I did. And I got a master's on it. That's all I remember about the test. And if you're lucky, that's about all this generation is going to remember about those damn tests. But what they're also going to remember is how teachers stress the tests. They're going to remember about how many different ways they get benchmarked and try to do all this stuff. What they'll really remember are the assignments that people do that are actually kinesthetic, or they're actually kind of creative. But we ask, what's the difference in students? There's no difference in the students once you give them boundaries and you give them respect and you treat them like they're little human beings, because they are. Do I say that we have more of an understanding of mental health? Yes. But I think we coddle it too much sometimes too. Cause some of these kids, I'm dealing more like I don't remember having a friends, and maybe it was just a group I hung out with. I'm not gonna say there weren't, but I don't remember being as prevalent of this like fear of failure. And maybe it was just the fact that I hung out with athletes or just people like my core group of friends doesn't really fear to fail. But this generation, there's a lot of kids that even in the poor neighborhoods are afraid to fail. They're afraid that they're gonna fuck up and there's nothing after that. Not realizing that the failure is part of the lesson and it's a needed part of the lesson. I think the greatest thing my grandfather ever really taught me was that if I don't get it today and I'm getting aggravated with something, I don't see it right then, to quit on it for that day and get some clear eyes for tomorrow. This generation doesn't have the patience to do that sometimes. That's another thing. We've taught our kids we haven't taught our kids how to truly be patient about stuff. In their minds, they have to always be entertained. And I'll admit, my kids are the same way in a lot of ways, in that because we use the phone as a babysitter just to keep them entertained instead of having them learn how to do stuff. I think my grandfather and my aunt were really good about getting them to learn how to sit in a restaurant and stuff like that, more so than me and my wife, because we, like, with grandma, instead of making a scene or having a scene made, because my wife gets embarrassed really easily, we didn't teach the girls a lot of times how to handle that. But I've always encouraged my girls to try something even when they think they're gonna fail. I think the other thing is that because we were allowed to fail, we could figure out the potential of what we could do a lot better. Like when we talk about kids not having confidence and like just because something messes up, there are lessons that just haven't been taught to by the time they get to me. And we're talking middle school, so I'm talking they're they're out of the first decade of their life. In that first decade, like we'll be honest, elementary teachers, because they got them all day, coddle them a little bit more. They're more of a motherly or fatherly figure than I am as a middle school teacher, who I'm gonna have them 45 minutes to 90 minutes a day. And we have more, not that we don't, not that elementary schools don't have a lot to do, but in the mindset of middle school is we have to start treating you like you're going to start being responsible. Because over the next 6 years or the next 7 years while they're in secondary school, from middle school to high school, we're supposed to teach you to be an adult. And we've gotten away from that in a lot of ways. Um, I will say that, like, my district and the state of Texas has done a good job in maybe later than they should have, but coming up with curriculum that helps with some problems. I think for a while we screwed our students because they didn't have to learn cursive for like a 15-year period till recently. And that's something that was introduced in third grade. And I remember it. I still write in cursive here and there. I have horrible handwriting, and it was horrible when I was a kid in cursive, and now it's not as bad when I'm writing in cursive or even when I'm writing in print. So that's another thing that's changed. Like what we teach the kids and what we think is important has changed. I think the pacing we've slowed down too much sometimes, or we've sped up way too much because we're putting stuff that conceptually in learning how the mind works, these kids may not get yet. And we're trying to force feed them something that their minds might not get. We've gotten away from basic principles of teaching. I think teaching's always been viewed as uh, as a profession that's not a profession, and that's not a craft. There's a craft to teaching and coaching, and they go hand in hand. They're intertwined like this. Because any of your great coaches that you respect were teachers at some point in time. Vince Lombardi was a high school teacher. Tom Landry was a high school teacher. Mike Sherman, Mike Holmgren. Any coach that started off in high school was a teacher at some point in time in their career. Greg Popovich, yeah, he's been a coach, but he teaches the game and he teaches about life. Like, they were all teachers. We taught to do what we needed to do. And I'm saying this as a coaching perspective. I've learned a lot this year. So hopefully I can go coach somewhere higher next year. And we'll see. And even my students teach me some things about the words I say and words I've said to some of them. I had an interesting conversation with one of them today. And it was after we got our bus gig. But yeah, because he's one of my leaders and something I said affected him. And while I'm sorry for what I'm sorry for what I said, but not for the reason I said it and not for the result that has come of it. I'm sorry just because I didn't mean to say it to hurt his feelings, and I'm callous on this sometimes. But the result that has come from it, I'm actually really happy about. Because he's one of those people that got a fight in him, and he's got a prove you wrong mentality. And I'm actually really happy about that. And I don't think I said it to him today. But if he hears this, I'm happy about it. And he'll know who I'm talking to. But yeah, I understand that there are a lot of people that had bad taste in their mouth from what teachers said, what teachers did doing. So we wanted to change that instead of realizing that not every teacher does that the same way. Even today, even as much stuff as we learn about teaching, it's not all a mirror image of each other. There are elements that are cookie cutter, but we all get there in our own way. Like, I kind of have fun. I'm an instructional assistant. I'm a base teacher. So basically what that means is I'm a behavior specialist and I learned how to handle kids. And one of my greatest strength is that I can build a relationship with a kid and figure out that kid and see what they're doing and try and figure them out to how to help them the best way I can. Am I going to do it 100% of the time? No. But I'm going to try my best. And I do it as a coach too. Figure out whose buttons I can push, figure out like all of that. But I don't think as a kid, the way my coaches handled me affected me as much as it does the generation I'm coaching now and how I have to watch what I'm doing. I think there was just a different view on everything. And so actually I know there's not, I thought there's a different view on everything. My generation of kid was just coming of age in a lot of ways in certain situations where we could reasonably accept something that most people didn't accept in generations previously, but it wasn't as out of the open. And I'll say it was the gay community because I remember being, and it wasn't like an utter shock, but I remember being struck one day going to my alma mater, high school, and mind you, the school I originally taught at as a teacher in my district was also a school that I went to for like 6 months and met my first openly gay person I ever knew. Cool guy. And actually, we talked not too while I was in the ALE class there because of the restaurant he worked at. We talked online. I follow him on Facebook. He's got one of the funniest stories about him from my life. But that's a guy that I remember being the first openly gay guy that I ever talked to. And then come to find out after playing football, there were like 5 or 6 guys through my whole football career that came out as gay after the fact. Not that I'm surprised by that number, especially now, but just that's what happened back then. Now the kids are more open about stuff like that. I've had quite a few girls that that talk like they're gonna be a boy or they're gonna do stuff the boys or they take on a boy's name and they take on that personality in middle school. And I think that's a good place to do that because it's before you get out to the real world. And middle school is a point where a lot of people are exploring what they don't know. But I think we made a lot of kids mentally weak because we haven't taught them to fail and we haven't taught them to learn to problem solve and figure out something for themselves a lot of time. With or without the phone. I'll take even with the phone if you can figure it out. Because I'm not gonna sit here and say that I know how to do everything I've ever done and that I haven't used YouTube to find a cheap way to do stuff. But I knew what I was looking for. I knew how to go find it. And there are a lot of kids that don't really know what they're looking for, even if we're teaching them. And here's another thing: we don't, because the kids take on what their parents' expectation is of education. If they don't have a high expectation of it, then the kid doesn't have a high expectation of it, and they don't want to come in learning. Even in sports, a lot of times, and especially in sports, we have people who are doing conflicting things. And I work in a public school, so say like we're about to start basketball in like 2 weeks. We got another week of football, and then we're gonna go into basketball. And I know, like when I get football players that have been taught football, and then we got to teach them stuff a certain way. And it contradicts what they learn, and they come question you about it. Because we're trying to teach the fundamentals of the game, and we're also trying to teach it to whatever high school we're feeding into, so you kind of know what their lingo is and what they do and stuff like that. So I think those are all differences in education now to what it was. Um, Now, my thoughts on WWE. I'll be honest. I've watched all but one match of Crown Jewel so far. I don't think I've watched the Seth Rollins Cody Rhodes match yet. But my thoughts on WWE right now, man, it's been good. It's been fun to watch. The Rhea EO storyline has been good. I'm waiting to see who turns on who. That may be one that boils for a little while. The Uso storyline and Jay Uso and the way he's changing looks good. John Cena's farewell tour. I've loved his last couple matches. I love this one with AJ Styles. I love the old school uniform, the old school stuff on AJ, him doing the throwback, and them having such respect for each other, and them using other people's finishers, like telling the story of their careers, and that was just a beautiful match. And the moment where he did, John Cena does Sister Abigail. I almost had tears, like, just because of how emotional that moment became. And how emotional the crowd made that moment. Like, that was one of the best storytelling matches I'd seen in forever. And they didn't even really put a story together except it was John Cena, AJ Styles. This is an old rivalry. And we didn't get Mike back and forth between them because of Cena's stuff. But they still told they probably told the best story of the night. They told a great story, and I loved it. So that's my thoughts on WWE. I'm loving this. And when John Cena retires and AJ Styles says he's going to retire next year, those are two great storytellers that I've got to see for 20 years. I kind of watched TNA in its beginning and knew who AJ Styles was, and then I kind of glanced back at it here and there. But it wasn't like a nightly, like a regular watch for me. Just kind of one of those things I dabbled my toe in for a while. But to say that he wasn't that face for a long time, like he was TNA, him, Samoa Joe, even with Kurt Angle there and the Dudley Boys there as Team 3D, the James Gang there and all that, like those originals that kind of built it. Bobby Roode, I remember falling in love with Bobby Roode over there. Beer Money I don't remember Beer Money that well because I didn't really watch it during that time, but I do remember seeing stuff here and there. Abyss is a monster. I would have loved to have seen an Abyss Undertaker match. I think that would have been so cool. Unfortunately, we never got it, but I wish we could have. Even Sting's craziness character, Jay Lethal, uh, Christian Cage, or yeah, Christian Cage, and even the Hardy Boys stuff that was done over there. Like that stuff, it was fun to watch back then. But just them referencing all that stuff in that match was just great. So I'm gonna go off on that. My football thoughts, fucking Dallas. My personal thoughts on Dallas defense is they just don't have the right types of bodies for the defense that they're playing now. Because you went from the defense that they had, which was a front running style defense, a cover two style defense. So it was more built on speed. And I think what Matt Eberflus wants to do is more built on probably a little bit more size and not less speed, but there's some more size to it. So in saying that, those are my football thoughts on the NFL. I'm glad to see the Texans came out and had a big win last week. Just the one thing that's really bugging me are all the damn injuries. And I know I've talked about it before, but man, they need to get these bodies calloused again, or the mindset needs to change. Like, I understand these guys are multi-million-dollar investments. So sometimes they get held out on, I guess, what we would have called little baby injuries and stuff. But I get it because there are such highly paid assets. Oh, excuse me. But I'm just missing, we're starting to miss more and more stars because they get injured. And some of them are freaky injuries, but some of them are and stuff that you can't control. But some of them come from just not having the playing time and getting the body callous and the body used to doing something. Um, College football, you know what? Today's Saturday. I got to see my Aggies win. Texas won, and surprisingly versus Oklahoma, but that's always a classic matchup. It's not as big of an upset as people think it is, but it's an upset in that just because Texas won, and I'm a Aggies fan, so orange down. If they don't like it, they can kiss my ass too. Um, the other thing I want to talk about is stuff that's entertained me. And I have become a fan on TikTok of like when Lego sets come out. Just because I like seeing what they're gonna build doesn't mean I'm gonna go buy them because they've gotten really expensive. But I do love some of the stuff people come up with for Legos. I've loved the Transformer ones. Man, I want like a whole bunch of different Lego sets. Ugh. And that's what I would like. But Legos, man, I spent my first 5 years like teaching and stuff, and also doing Lego robotics. That was cool to me. I always have fun doing that. So just Legos in general. I just like some of the stuff that they have now, the lights and stuff that we didn't have when I was a kid. Like I would love to go get the Black Pearl one. I would love to go get the Death Star one. There's a whole bunch of shit I would love to go get, but just seeing all the stuff people are coming up with and how like get that kind of back look of how Lego actually picked some of its sets, which was really cool. Coming out with the Goonies set and the pirate shit, like those are stuff I would love to get. The Home Alone set would have been great to get, like all that type of stuff. I just love being a big kid going to the Lego store and just seeing this stuff and going, "Oh, that's cool. That'd be fun to work on." Um, and also having like a little Lego thing in my room that I let my kids use when they want to calm down. It's a cool thing to see kids still loving Legos. So, uh, just just I hope everybody has that thing that they love to go back to that takes them back to their childhood. Legos for me are one, board games and card games are another. But I just love, like, and it's calming to me to build Legos. I just love doing it. So, hey, y'all, that's how I'm gonna end it today, talking about Legos and just being a goofy big kid. This is Coach Lindsay from the Jackass Podcast. Hey, y'all, peace out. Have a good week. If y'all got a 3-day weekend from school, have fun. See y'all next week. I'll try and get it done on Wednesday. Bye.